Hi, my name is Maris Kreisman, and I run events and marketing at McNally Jackson. And I'm so thrilled to welcome you tonight to another excellent virtual event for the store. If you go to McNallyJackson.com and look at our events calendar, you'll see all the amazing writers and programs we're hosting in the coming days and weeks. Please keep an eye on the site or subscribe to our newsletter to hear more about what's coming up soon. There will be time at the end of tonight's readings for your questions. You can use the Zoom chat function to submit any question you have, and we'll get to them towards the end of the evening. So start thinking now. We're so glad that even though we can't all be in the same room at the moment, we're still able to host events during this difficult time. As we've changed phases from staying at home to opening for curbside pickup to again admitting customers into our 4 locations, indie bookstores like ours still need more support. And so if you enjoy free events like this and want us to keep hosting more of them, please buy books from us. Throughout the evening, I'll be posting links in the chat to buy books from lots of the readers you'll hear from tonight. And I'm so glad that they can be with us. It's my delight to help Epiphany Magazine celebrate the end of 2020. We're here with some of their favorite past contributors and Breakout 8 prize winners. The event is hosted by Epiphany Editor-in-Chief and author of the novel Self-Portrait with Boy, Rachel Lyon, who I'm so pleased to introduce to you now.
Thanks, Maris. We're so happy to be partnering with McNally Jackson tonight, and really happy to see all of your faces. And those of you whose names I see, really happy to see your names in lieu of your faces. I wish I had a copy of the next issue of Epiphany to show you tonight, because it is really outstanding, a very beautiful, it's going to be a very beautiful issue, but it is not available yet. You can pre-order it though. It is available on our website to order, and we're just in the final throes of reading the very last of our submissions and getting the issue together to send to the printer. So we're really excited about that. But I do have, you'll see the last 2 issues of Epiphany, which are the 2 that I've worked on as editor-in-chief during my time here. So, and we actually have 2 contributors to one of these issues reading with us tonight. But before I get to that, I would like to just, by way of introduction, let you know, if you're new to Epiphany, if you are not familiar with our magazine, we're about a 20-year-old literary magazine, give or take. We publish emerging and established writers and visual artists in a biannual print journal, and we publish online year-round. We really are dedicated to supporting emerging writers in addition to publishing established writers. And one of the ways we do that is by paying all of our contributors and our annual Breakout 8 prize, which is a cash prize, mentorship, and publication. And it is awarded to 8 student writers, 4 in poetry and 4 in prose. So we also have a couple of former Breakout 8 winners reading tonight, but in the forthcoming issue, we will have 8 new Breakout 8 winners. So we're very excited about that. We've also had a pretty good year despite everything. We've grown significantly. Our staff has increased significantly. We've increased the number of poets and writers we're publishing. We have a bunch of new verticals on our website. We're publishing a lot of different series, including the Epiphanic, and we have one of our Epiphanic contributors reading with us tonight too. So we're a 501c3. We rely on grants and donations. In fact, right now, our board of directors is pledging to match any donation made before midnight tomorrow. So there are 28 hours left. I will leave it at that. I'm going to post a link in the chat. And if you feel moved by what you hear tonight, we would love for you to show us with a small donation of any size, of course, or simply just sit back and enjoy the night. So I'm going to post that link in a minute, and we're really looking forward to hearing from our first reader. So Hawa Allan is one of our Epiphanic contributors. She writes cultural criticism, fiction, and poetry. Her work has appeared, among other places, in the Baffler, the Chicago Tribune, Lapham's Quarterly, and Tricycle magazine, where she's a contributing editor. Insurrection, a weaving of personal narrative and legal history, is forthcoming from W.W. Norton. Hawa is one of our contributors to this online series, The Epiphany, and her work has really been an incredible boon to our site. So we're so happy to have her tonight. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to meet you, Rachel, albeit virtually. I want to thank the other members of the Epiphany Magazine and the editors of the Epiphanic series. It's been a lot of fun writing for it this year. This is my first time as a columnist and not having to pitch anything, which is incredible. But it's also just been a very enriching sort of experience for me personally, having to delve into some material that I'm already very interested in a very deep way every month. So thank you very much for that opportunity. So to keep things on a schedule, what I'm doing tonight is reading an excerpt of a piece that I did write for the Epiphany. It is a review essay I wrote on Escape to Berlin by Adrian Piper, who is both an analytical philosopher and a conceptual artist. So in short, the memoir centers on her flight from her post as a tenured professor at what she refers to as the college. And she left there to go to Berlin, and now she has her own foundation and she's working more independently. So throughout the review essay, I not only review her book, but I also riff as well on the material that basically captured me from the memoir. Okay, so here's the excerpt. I read Escape to Berlin both as a cautionary tale and as my own private vindication for all those roads not taken. Perhaps Piper was not simply refusing to refer to Wellesley by name, but by only referring to the college, was conceding to a pessimistic generalization of her negative experiences in the academy. However, I read her work to be not only an indictment of academia, but of all workplaces, which in a similar spirit, I will refer to as the institution. From PR firms to newsrooms, to nonprofits, to law firms, to courtrooms, to classrooms, and even or especially in supermarkets and fast food joints, the institution in all its manifestations is a little fiefdom characterized by petty abuses of power, where everyone is a wannabe overlord. The institution always has a stated mission, which is proudly parroted in the words of those who labor on behalf of them, but the institution is also always permeated and ultimately governed by an unstated mission, which everyone already seems to know but will never tell you. To be fair, I do remember soon after graduating from my own college, having been hired at one of the institutions, finding myself on the receiving end of a number of conspiratorial winks from coworkers. I had no idea what they were trying to tell me, only that they were hinting at something. Nonetheless, part of playing the game seems to entail never overtly admitting that you are, in fact, playing, or that there is a game at all. As Piper writes, quote, "Only a gullible and self-indulgent windbag dissipates her strategic advantage by voicing her convictions, destroying her neutrality, and alienating her allies by implicitly challenging them to mask her risky behavior by revealing themselves in turn," end quote. When you're admitted into the institution, you're not just walking into a given building or a floor of a given building outfitted with offices and desks and chairs. You're entering into a construct, an otherworldly paradigm silently presided over by unwritten laws. These laws will not be found on the institution's website. Studying the institution's code of conduct will not help you. And high intelligence, passion, and curiosity, the very combination of factors that likely granted you admission into the institution, may very well be your downfall. If you merely apply your high intelligence, passion, and curiosity to your written job description, the one the institution said it was hiring you to fulfill, then you will, according to the unwritten laws, be underperforming. You will have failed to comply with the unspoken rules to know your rank, stay in your place, and effectively, seamlessly navigate the institution's entrenched minefield of egos. Now, the string-pulling authoritarian bullies seem to know these unwritten rules, which they skillfully apply as they artfully dodge, sidestep, and lever themselves into positions from which they can then administratively intimidate those who would dare threaten their newfound status of relative overlordship. They seem to know that they've been hired for 2 jobs, not 1, and will continue to maneuver up the ranks in order to secure as much compensation as possible for their stated role. When you're navigating the institution as a woman or a non-white, especially Black person, the unwritten rules of engagement to avoid appearing to overtly disrupt the pre-existing hierarchy while diligently climbing over others to ascend it is further overlaid with the stigma of societal caste. One is to assume her rightful place at the institution, not only in accordance with the job title, but also according to race and/or gender, which as a Black woman is typically assigned to be somewhere towards the bottom. This is not to say that it's impossible as a Black woman to claw up the institution's ranks, but given the enhanced scrutiny and surveillance your colleagues will instinctively subject you to on account of your race and gender, it will take a tremendous amount of energy. You will resort to perfectionism and overperformance, hardly leaving time for the maneuvering and machinations that string-pulling authoritarian bullies who are white and/or male would, due to the ample benefit of the doubt they are afforded, have much more time to attend to. Quote, I learned from my parents my reflexive counter-reaction to being a constant object of suspicion and mistrust, end quote. Piper writes of her striving to falsify the stereotype, quote, and having to pass the same test of trustworthiness with virtually every person I meet in any capacity every time I meet them, end quote. So even if you know about the game, not only would you not have much time or energy to play it, but would anyone play the game with you or dare say, let you win? Or would they test you over and over and over again to reconfirm that you were an eligible contestant to begin with? As a Black woman at the institution, when it is all said and done, you must outperform the written rules of your job, suss out and struggle to oblige by the institution's unwritten rules, and, if that weren't enough, become a poster child for the institution's nominal commitment to diversity and inclusion. So not only are your opportunities for advancement continually questioned and even thwarted, but you are effectively getting one salary for at least 3 different jobs. Alas, one more fine point. High intelligence, passion, and curiosity, especially as a Black woman within the institution, may also become your downfall because this combination of factors poses a double affront. They threaten both the institution's entrenched hierarchy, which any highly intelligent, passionate, and curious person already has to contend with, and the overlay of societal caste. The dissonance is too great, and the institution cannot hold. The epic battle has begun, and the question is begged, will you break through to the institution, or will the institution break you? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hawa. That was really powerful. So that piece is actually, there's a link to that right now in the chat if anyone would like to read it. And when is your book coming out?
Next year. When I have more details, I will definitely share them.
Okay, great. And if you guys are friends with Epiphany on social, you'll see we'll share that. So thank you so much. Our next reader is Amy Lillard. So I mentioned we have a few readers who are Breakout 8 winners. Amy was a winner of our very first Breakout 8 contest in 2018. She is the author of Dig Me Out, a story collection coming in 2021 from Atelier 26 Books. And she was shortlisted for the 2017 Berlin Writing Prize. Her writing appears in Foglifter, Off Assignment, Adroit, Gertrude, and other publications. She's also one of the broads behind Broads and Books, a funny and feminist book podcast. You can find Amy online at amylillard.com. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you all. It's so nice to see you. What I'm reading is a short section of a story from my collection that Rachel just mentioned, Dig Me Out, which is coming next year. The story is called Head Like a Hole. And thus far in the story, a woman has found a hole in her suburban home's yard and become obsessed to her husband's confusion. Animals that dig holes, moles, chipmunks, skunks, groundhogs. They dig out grubs for meals, build burrows and tunnels for shelter. Wild things are living in this sedate suburb underneath us. When I can't sleep, and I can never sleep, I study holes in their makers. I take notes. This is not crazy. This is what 49-year-old women do. We throw ourselves into gardening and we knead all we can out of our plot of earth. We buy gloves and hats, trowels and shovels. We grip green things and we decide what lives and dies. This is crazy, I said, but I want you to keep watch with me. He looked at me a long time. Okay, he said, but doesn't it feel like we're spying on our neighbors? I pulled him into the living room on the brown microfiber love seat. I turned the lights out. He shrugged and sank down, smiling at the new game, asked how late we were going to stay up. Until we see what's happening, I said. We sat in the dark and waited. The clock on the living room wall circled past 11 at midnight. I felt him shifting more, jolting himself awake. Remember when we'd just be getting started around this time? He scratched at his throat and shook his head. Hammering down shots over your sink, then cabbing to Neo, thrashing all night. I remembered the harsh house lights coming on at 5 a.m. We'd make our way home, our feet throbbing from the concrete dance floor, our heads pounding with the echo of punk and goth beats. I'd turn rabid when we got back to my loft, command him, fill me, bite me, tear me apart, and he'd obey. On our couch, he whispered, "What are you expecting to see?" "I'm not expecting anything," I said. "What if it's a neighbor?" "It's not a neighbor." "But what if..." He fell asleep, mid-sentence, slumping down in his seat. Animals that morph, the mutable rain frog, the golden tortoise beetle, the cuttlefish. Most of them change their skin and coloring for defense or as a surprising offense. At night, when I can't sleep, and I can never sleep, I try on wigs, I paint my face, I dig out old clothes I never gave away. When he and I were young, dancing till 5, I did this for real. I dyed my hair jet black, wore leather and black lips. I cut and spiked my hair with fuchsia, wore baby doll dresses and combat boots. I changed my body and my body became change. At some point, the only change left was age. Do the things older women did. Trade in discount paintbrushes and kitchen shears to a stylish chair and foil, Wicker Park for Wilmette. Leave behind Riot Girl, embrace gardening. This is not crazy, it's what animals do. "This is crazy," I said the next morning, "but it's bigger, so we need to watch again." "Babe," he said, rubbing at the steel wool on his cheeks, "we can't do all-nighters anymore." I wanted to tell him that all my nights were all-nighters. "I'm staying up," I said, "I want you to join me." "Okay," he said, his eyes wide. I never made demands. So that night, after his shower, and the next night, and the night after that, I led him into the living room. We turned off the lights, settled into the couch. I watched the lawn, he watched me. "Remember," he'd say, the quiet and the dark made him nostalgic. "Remember the song you danced to at Neo?" The DJ played Bauhaus, Ministry, Depeche Mode, and I danced to all of it. I was 20 and had a fake ID and black eyes, and the bouncer let me in every time. The dance floor spun and cratered, smoke silhouetting all of us. One night they played a new song with heavy synths and pounding drums. Head like a hole, black as your soul. I thrashed, kicked, headbanged, jumped. My hair long and black, a whip I wielded. "Remember," he said, pulling me back to then, ignoring now. He fell asleep mid-memory. Pardon me. Animals that age, all of them. At night, I count all the me's. Purple-haired, brunette, black, bleach blonde, cigarette thin and healthy fat, new wave, goth, punk, anti-marriage, wife, transforming my shape, my outlook, my me-ness, searching for the thing that would snap into place and make this carcass feel like home. But it never worked. And now this corpse I live in is hardening with age, calcifying into rigor. I have to cut it back, force myself out, do what animals do. This isn't crazy. This is crazy. This isn't crazy. This is, what are you doing? I froze, my hands curled around dirt, the man behind me. "Hey," he said, "what are you doing?" I sniffed, smelled his swamp breath and sweat. I turned around in the hole, which now came to my waist, breathing hard, little grunts of exhales. I saw what he saw, the dirt on my feet and hands, my threadbare 9-inch nails t-shirt, digging, hunched over, dirt flying between my legs. He looked at me and I know he was searching for that young girl pounding the concrete, black boots and black shirts and black hair, combat gear for war on the dance floor. "She's in here," I said. "She's trapped."
Thank you so much, Amy. That was so fun. And that book is coming out
Next year, next fall, yes.
Oh, fantastic. From Atelier 26 books.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So moving right along, our next reader, I think, is the only poet of the group, which, you know, I'm so sorry to any poets in the audience. We really should have represented our poets better. But this is an excellent representation of any poet. Leah Umansky is a teacher and a poet in Manhattan. She's the author of 2 full-length collections, The Barbarous Century and Domestic Uncertainties, among others. She earned her MFA in poetry at Sarah Lawrence College and is the curator and host of the Couplet Reading Series in New York City. Her poems have appeared in such places as Thrush, Glass Poetry Journal, the New York Times, the Bennington Review, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, and Rhino. Leah was a contributor to our fall-winter 2019 issue, the first issue I worked on as editor-in-chief, and she was actually meant to read with us last year, so I'm so glad she's back with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me okay? Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. I'm proud to be the only poet here. Okay, I'm going to read you a couple poems. This first one is called Off Guzzle, and it's published now in the Volta. Prove your humanity. Keep it hard, says my spam, timelessly. The implications suffer such a strong narrative. The mixed messages so purposeful, yet so purposely timeless. I've worked so hard to cut the chaos out of my life, but this path has its own nondescript timeline, a trap of darkness, a relief of fat, too full to loosen, too tragic to try. People show you who they are, but things get lost in the choosing. You see what you want to see over time. The history of a thing is just a story. Are we ever certain of anything? In the meantime, there is no theory. No one knows how the other really lives. With themselves, I mean. I'm clocking my time. This stroll gets old fast and less walkable. A lit alley aching for the dark. How do we get to the pinnacles? Who can say? Who? The future is in your mouth. Is it? I want it in my hands. This next poem is called Echo, and it's kind of the same poem in 2 different ways. You can't really see it, but you'll hear the difference. The first one is sort of spread out on the page, and the second one is in lines. Echo. Everything in echo, everything present, but not. The present, a glitch, but not. So much takes up space. So much takes, sometimes. One hand doesn't talk to another. Sometimes there are only questions I could ask myself. Even when you don't know, you know. There's always a side door. It's about a here. Echo. Everything in echo. Everything present, but not present. So much takes up space, so much takes. Sometimes one hand doesn't talk to another. Sometimes there are only questions I can ask myself. Even when you don't know, you know. There's always a side door. It's about a here. This next poem is called Of Men, and this was in the 2019 issue of Epiphany. I'm really glad to read it now since I couldn't in person last year. Of Men. And why is it that everything is built for the hands of men? And why is so much of today islanding away from us? And where is the past when we need it? And where is the love? And where is the following of one joy to the next? And where are the consequences and repercussions? And where is the captive? And where is the blood? The other day, the tyrant said, hate has no place in our country, while naming the wrong city where the tragedy occurred. And I thought, is man no more than this? The foolery of men and this world and the hands of men. Everything moves too fast, and it is hard to live living directly heart to head, heart to mouth, heart to hand, to hand to hand, and hard to insist on the gut, its taste and reflection, What is casual? What is pleasure? What is fleeting? What stays behind? What is the tempering and the patience, the grappling? We cringe in this world of men and shouldn't. I listen and shouldn't. I be and shouldn't. I weather and shouldn't. I hush and shouldn't. I know and shouldn't. I wonder, declutter, sit, still, come, reveal, suggest, sit, still, stiller, still, no. This world of men, this world of men is merely a mention. Here, this room, this hand of my touch, take that tyranny back. The world of men, their hands and hearts, and hands built for touch. The world of men is measly. The world of men is measurable. This world of men is merely menstrual, in rush, in flow, and don't they know it? See the handling clearer. This world is built for no one. This world reveals another, a gentler world, with gentler hands to hold the world of men. Bid the dishonest man mend himself, mend yourself, mend the world of men. And then this is my last poem. Thank you so much. It's so great to read with everyone. This is a brand new poem called Monologue, and it's forthcoming in Memorious, and it's after the fiction writer Amir McBride. Monologue. The back of what happens next goes like this. There is so little you can tell a reader. You can give a place for them to wait, a sort of dead time that is unreal and fathomed, or phantomed in ghost or fever or ghost, in dream delay, stay, stray, slay. But let's pause on sorrow. Feeling and emotion are only part of the truth. It is in the trappings of each day that we woman ourselves forward. We are the stronger sex. I have enough of the slow woman in me, piecing together what is all right. You have a history. You don't know what could hurt you. You don't know what could happen. We are all waiting to do a thing, to mollify or sway, reason or stay. But what would the informed delivery appear as? Something will happen. It'll be momentary, abstract. What is maladjusted adjusts. It will be a release, the best conversation in the world, or an explosion of slight pivots, where little by little we face what lies ahead, a few inches at a time, turning and turning and turning and reaching and reaching and reaching with our arms and our eyes and our hearts and our minds and our hands, our hands, our hands, our hands, our hands, our hands, our hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. You know, I misspoke. We do have another poet in the works, and I can only blame it on my own lack of sleep. I'm so sorry, but you can find that awesome poem in last year's issue of Epiphany 1 year ago. Thanks, Leah. So moving right along, our next reader is a poet. Shuang Ang was born and raised in Singapore. She graduated with an MFA from Sarah Lawrence College, and her work has been seen in Tinderbox Poetry Journal, The Rumpus, and the Asian American Writers Workshop. Shuang is currently working on her debut collection and taking care of her rescue dog, Luna, and she was a winner of last year's 2019 Breakout 8 prize. We're so happy to have you, Shuang.
Hey, I have 3 poems for tonight, so I will just jump right into it. The first one is called Lessons in Translation. From a distance, I could not hear what my mother was saying to the blonde barista, could only note the fold and unfold of my mother's fingers kneading a shape into rising air. I do not know when I had learned to recognize the signs of my mother's bewilderment. But as I watched her shoulders tense, then slacken, I rose from my seat as if called to arms from a great distance. Zhizin, my mother said to me, the small crumb on her upper lip bobbing as she spoke. How to translate the shock of my mother abruptly fallible. Knowing what I know now, I would have tucked the answer into the open bracket of her year, a gift for her to offer with her own 2 palms. But my shame was still sick then, and I was wilting furiously beneath the heat of the barista's blue gaze. Napkins, I said, stamping my voice over my mother's the way she must have done for me so many times before. Averting my gaze, I saw, only out of the corner of my eye, the woman who had taught me to name even this shudder of indignity rearrange herself into a sudden gathering of floodwaters breaking over a crowded city, like some arrival to be corrected. The next poem is called Momentary Motherhood. The spring before my midriff expands, I mother my first pup. I untie shoes from a flurry of teeth, trade the carpet for pee pads. It takes me 3 days to guide her small paws up and down the stairs, 3 days of tugging and tantrums, and then there she goes, tiny tsunami rounding the corner. True, I do not know what it is like to be a mother. All summer after that, I lie beneath fluorescent eyes and wonder. I part my knees to rubber-tipped instruments as the sheet below me blooms bloody. For 2 weeks, I introduce antagonists into my body, watched my skin stretch for what is and is not coming, a field full of golden heads ripe for the picking. After the pup is adopted, I cry all the way home in my gnawed boots. I startle awake at midnight to the specter of silence unfurling its furred body. The flowers are still slowly opening. When they are done, I will lie back down and hand over the keys to my cellar. Watch as they carry egg after egg out of me. There they go, tiny possibilities crossing the border. And I will read one last poem. It's called Sorrow, and I wrote it when I had to leave New York abruptly and return back home to Singapore during, like when the pandemic first hit. Yeah. Sorrow. For the first time, my body behaves like it never left. Waking up in night blindness, I make my way to fetch water and do not spill a single drop. The koal's swelling song does not wake me. Jet lag is but a faint swash of memory. My tongue blunts itself once more. I forget the word for sorrow, can only say it is sadness, doubled. I sit at home and think about home elsewhere, a week's worth of broccoli beginning to perish. I have left every book I want to read 9,000 miles away. Earliest spring in 124 years arrives, reads the news. I want a world where these are the headlines, not the empty belly of what once was my city. I know there are so many things to be grateful for. The sun still staining the sky, my lungs still pedaling onward. Forgive me my selfish preoccupation. It may be years before I witness another spring, before I walk below an endless parade of arms bowing from the weight of pink stars. This tropic haze is diluting time. How long has it been since I exited the cab that saw me to JFK, my driver joking, "See you soon"? God, I know there are more important things to pray for, but I want the strength to believe in him, to unknot my body's quiet betrayal. I want to wake up in the hum of midnight and startle, forgetting for a second the swift acts of displacement. I want to remember the word sorrow, to use it only for the sight of flowers loosening from the trees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry about that moment of mental glitch there. There is a link to American Lessons by Shuang Ang in the chat if you'd like to read it. And there's also, we have a recording of you reading it on our site, as well as an interview, I think, with you. So we're so happy to have you tonight. Thank you, Shuang. Our next reader is Amber Sparks. So Amber Sparks is the author of And I Do Not Forgive You, Stories and Other Revenges, and The Unfinished World. Her fiction and essays have appeared in American Short Fiction, Paris Review, Tin House, Granta, and elsewhere. She lives in Washington, D.C. with her husband, daughter, and 2 cats. And Amber guest judged the prose submissions for this year's Breakout 8 prize, which are forthcoming in the very beautiful fall-winter 2020 issue. Thank you for joining us tonight, Amber.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And thank you to McNally Jackson for having us. I miss McNally Jackson, and I can't wait to get back to all the stores once this whole thing is over. I'm going to read a really winter-y story, which is hopefully not too depressing. I've actually never read this one before at a reading, which is an extraordinarily stupid thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's called Mildly Joyful with Moments of Extraordinary Unhappiness. The man and the woman are childless and wealthy and happy. She loves him and he loves her, in part because of affection, in part because of muscle memory, in part because of their shared personal possessions. They love each other about as much as people who adore things can love other people. She has learned to love things less the older she grows. He has come to depend on them. She is generous and quiet, and he is witty and talkative. They are a good match. All their friends say so. They eat out every night at loud restaurants with short menus and long waits. Occasionally, they order in. They live in a nice 2-bedroom condo in the city. The master bedroom is full of paintings they've acquired during their travels. Their bed is hand-carved, their sheets are embroidered, their second bedroom is used as a study, and they filled it with sculpture and books and other beautiful things. They both have high-paying jobs they tolerate, and they travel often, and she plays piano in the evenings while he sings along. It's enough to remind them of their former selves, because before they acquired so many things, but after they acquired each other. He is kind to her, and she is kind to everybody. If pressed, he would say it's the only thing he doesn't like about her. This, he knows, sounds monstrous, but he understands he's borrowed so many better traits from her. He would not use the word jealous, but resentment, yes, perhaps. He has only enough kindness for one person. He supposes that's what love means to him. If he were a good person, he supposes, it would be a trait he would love, this boundless heart. But he isn't a better person. He knows this about himself. She knows this too, and because she is kind, she loves him even more for it. One day, she goes for a walk, and she doesn't come back. He assumes that she's left, probably with one of the many men she spends her kindness on, or maybe one of the women. He does not call missing persons. He calls her parents and tells them she's run off with a lover. Her parents are horrified. Her mother offers to fly into town with a tuna casserole. He will be fine, he assures them. He expected something like this. He has prepared. He hangs up the phone and he feels his good bits breaking off, bitterness growing in like brittle new limbs. Later in the evening, a phone call from the hospital. She's been hit by a car, and would he come quickly, please, to say his goodbyes? He does not dare to come, not now. He does not tell her parents. He hides in his apartment and he orders Chinese from their favorite place. The delivery guy inquires after his wife and the man does not answer, instead hands him a 10. Inside his fortune cookie, what you deserve will find you. He swallows the paper, black ink smeared across the tip of his tongue. His wife dies in the early morning. After the funeral, he buys more things. Anyone would. There is now so much more space to fill. He fills and fills and fills with boxes he'll never open, crates he'll never unpack. He buys 20 identical sweaters from Barney's and never picks up the box from the front stoop. You can't do that now, obviously. Barney's is gone under. The same gray wool cardigan shows up on men and boys throughout the neighborhood that winter. Eventually, he decides it will be easier to erase her, to undo her. He gives away her things and he tells their friends that she was having affairs. He throws away their photo albums. He sells her piano, but the movers can't get it out of the window. They shake their heads and depart, sweaty and disappointed. He becomes fixated on the notion of getting the piano out, gone, any way that he can. He measures it obsessively, plans to chisel wider doorways, break window panes. He sketches plans that rival Wile E. Coyote's, all while he's supposed to be working. Finally, he buys a small axe from the neighborhood hardware store. The young woman there working makes a joke about the frozen sea within us, and he smiles wanly because his wife once bought a throw pillow embroidered with that quote, and it had given him some small pleasure then to prove she didn't know where it came from and that it was a stupid thing to sew onto a pillow. He marches home with purpose, axe very much in hand, and of course, no one stops him because he is white and middle-aged and wearing an expensive parka. He proceeds to chop up the piano, no method, just one thunderous chord at a time. When the police finally force the door, he's sitting in a pile of broken keys and lacquered wood. Someone called about a domestic disturbance, they say, and he shrugs and says yes. His wife's ghost hovers just overhead, and she smiles as if in apology, as if to say, "This is all my fault. I deserved it. I asked for it." But no one is fooled. The room vibrates with something much the opposite of kindness. The officers flee as the piano keys start to fly, broken bars whirling across the living room. From outside, they see the window darken. The man and his things are obscured by the blizzard of silent notes. Thanks.
Thank you, Amber. That was so fun. I'm just so grateful to all of you for coming tonight, and not just our readers, but the whole audience. You all are just really helping us ring in this new year and ring out this godforsaken old year. So thank you so much. Nadia Owusu is our next reader. She is a Brooklyn-based writer and urban planner. And actually, as I was listening to Amber and we have a few writers who have day jobs that are very different from writing tonight. So that's also always exciting to me, working writers who are doing something else with their lives as well. Nadia Owusu is a Brooklyn-based writer and urban planner. Simon & Schuster will publish her first book, Aftershocks, a memoir, on January 12th, 2021. It is coming right up. Her lyric essay chapbook, So Devilish a Fire, won the Atlas Review chapbook contest. Her writing has appeared or is forthcoming in the New York Times, the Washington Post's The Lily, Orion, and the Literary View, the Paris Review Daily, Electric Literature, Catapult, Bon Appetit, Epiphany, and others. She is the recipient of a 2019 Whiting Award, and her beautiful essay, Homemaking, appeared in last winter's issue. Welcome, Nadia.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Thanks everyone for being here. And I'm so excited to celebrate Epiphany, and it's good to be virtually at McNally Jackson since I haven't been able to be there for a while. I'm just going to read a short excerpt from my memoir, Aftershocks. Failures of language. I do not have my great-grandfather's worn but carefully pressed cotton handkerchief. My father's family aren't much for holding on to material things. I do not have my maternal great-grandmother's red hair or my paternal grandfather's coffee bean skin. What an unusual combination, people often say when I describe my parentage, Ghanaian, Armenian. And more than once, how did that even happen? I speak 3.5 languages that do not belong to me, that do not run through my veins: English, Italian, and French, decent Swahili. When my relatives and country people maneuver between English and their home languages, Tree, Armenian, and Turkish, I grip the ropes of the English words as firmly as my jittery hands will allow and loop them into knots. I watch for cocked eyebrows and pursed lips to translate the rest. The warm, round percussion of Tree and the orderly harmony of Turkish, which spoken by my family is diluted with a splash of archaic Armenian and a heavy pour of Boston accent, are familiar but impenetrable. I can spot members of my two disparate tribes in a crowd, but I cannot address them except in basic greeting and pleasantry. Good morning, how are you? Welcome. In Tree, I can also say, even the elephant can swat flies with its short tail, and any river loses its identity when entering the sea. My father, when his intention was to remind or chastise, was fond of proverbs and folktales. The heroes of those tales were animals of the forests, spirits and gods. I know them by name. My Ghanaian relatives are at times tickled by my inability to speak Tree. At other times, they are affronted. How can you not speak your own language, they ask, not acknowledging that my learning it would have required them to teach me. Once, when I was in the market with an auntie, I cannot remember which one, a woman asked why no one had taught me to speak my father tongue. Nobody wants to hear her speaking Tree in an American accent, the auntie replied. Since you replied in English, I can only assume she meant for me to understand. In Tree, I cannot say, love me, accept me. At 13, I could not ask my father not to die. In Turkish, I know the words for eggplant, yogurt, and savory pastries. The stories of my mother's family are very much concerned with food, what was served, whose dish was tastiest, and delicious gossip, who messed up the baklava. As a child, when I visited them in Massachusetts, we talked about eggplant, losh kebab, and pilaf with little chopped up noodles in it. We planned for dinner as we washed lunch dishes. We ate to remember those who escaped genocide and nearly starved in the desert, to honor what they made possible for us. My grandmother taught me to roll rice and lamb into grape leaves. My mother read to me from 1001 Nights. Ali Baba said, "Open sesame," and discovered a stolen treasure. A genie emerged from a lamp to do Aladdin's bidding. Scheherazade told tales to a king to delay her own execution. Another one, I said to my mother after each story. Tell me another one. I do not know the Turkish word for stay. At 7, I could not say, "Mama, come back." In Armenian, the language largely lost to my mother's family generations ago at the hands of the Ottoman Empire, the only word I know is the word for underwear, vardig. This knowledge I cannot explain. When I encounter strangers from my tribes, they are startled by my attempts to communicate. They do not recognize me as one of their own. They laugh, charmed, and perhaps a little disturbed by the discrepancy between appearance and sound. When I explain myself, they think me a curious hybrid. They speak to me always in English. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nadia. And the link to pre-order Aftershocks is in the chat. I'm going to turn over now. Well, I'm going to first introduce our wonderful development director, Allison Wood. So Allison came to us through the Breakout 8 prize, actually, and won it a couple years ago, right? 2019. And her book, which was excerpted in Epiphany, is now out. She's also become our development director since that happened, totally unrelatedly. So we're so happy to have her here tonight. Allison Wood's writing has been published in the New York Times, the Paris Review, the Rumpus, Catapult, and No Tokens. She teaches creative writing at her alma mater, New York University, and at Sackett Street Writers Workshop. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of Pigeon Pages, a New York City literary journal and reading series. She was a winner of the inaugural Breakout Award, 2018, from Epiphany Magazine and the Authors Guild. And since then, she has become our development director. Being Lolita from Flatiron Books at Macmillan is her first book. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Yeah, it's so strange to think back to when I won the Breakout 8. You know, I was in my first year in my MFA at NYU, and I remember feeling really, really, really lost and misunderstood. I thought nobody got my project. I was honestly like considering dropping out of the MFA. I had applied to the Breakout 8 and then I completely forgot. And I literally remember the day that I was having, and I was really thinking about like, is writing really for me? Like, did I make the right decision? And then Epiphany called me and said that I had won the Breakout 8. And it was just truly like such a huge moment for me. And it was such a big deal to have this wonderful, like fancy literary organization like Epiphany, you know, sort of like have this support and like belief in me. And only a few weeks later, I sold my book, which was excerpted in the Breakout 8 from 2018 issue, and sold the book, and it got published. And, you know, Epiphany was there for me in the very beginning, and I'm just so honored to be able to be part of it now. And, you know, it's programs like the Breakout 8, it's programs like the emerging writer support, and how Epiphany really values emerging writers and supports writers throughout their careers, and, you know, does this work. I mean, I think, you know, Rachel mentioned, I mean, $10,000 to contributors. I mean, it's so wonderful. And I'm just so lucky and grateful to be part of it now. And, you know, this is why supporting literary organizations is so important. And I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, like donating truly is an act of joy. Like it's about hope and optimism. And this has been such a terrible year. And I know that I and everyone else, I hope, is looking forward to 2021. And, you know, we are at Epiphany too, and we're really looking forward to so much more that we can do. And, you know, we appreciate any support you can give to us, because it goes right out to supporting writers. So with that, I'm just going to read the opening 2 pages of Being Lolita, which were what started all of this in the first place. So I'm just so excited to be here reading for you. So yeah, thank you. Okay, Being Lolita. The first time he kissed me, it wasn't on the mouth. I hadn't read the book yet. He told me it was a beautiful story about love. We would meet in the next town over, a diner off the highway, open all night. I would know what time to meet him in our booth in the back corner, because in the middle of his class, in front of everyone, he would look at me, look into my eyes, and write a number on the blackboard, 8 or 9 or 10, and then wipe it away with his other hand. He was an English teacher in my high school. His shirt sleeves were always chalk kissed with white. He was 26. The first time he saw me, I was 17. I would tell my parents I was going to a friend's house or studying somewhere, but really, I would be sitting across from him for hours, the pastel painting depicting Greek ruins on the wall above him, while he would grade his students' essays, and I would sometimes do my Latin conjugations. Mostly, I would write to him in front of him, and he would bring it home or sometimes read it there under the 24-hour fluorescence and then write back, all over napkins, the paper placemats, scraps from school. We probably covered hundreds of pieces with cursive, but I have only the handful that I hid from him, kept close and stolen away. Before we would leave, he'd take the papers and napkins and rip them up, put them into our water glasses, and I would watch them lose their shape and the ink bleed. I wasn't allowed to keep things. I wasn't supposed to call him Mr. when we were alone, only his first name, but I could never call him that in school. No phone calls, no emails, no touching. He made the rules. The rules were broken at that diner in our booth. It was May. Summer was almost there, and graduation hung in every classroom, crepe paper and glue glitter banners filling the halls, a countdown everywhere. You couldn't escape it. He was trying to teach me about great literature, to prepare me for what I would face as a freshman in college, just a few months in the future. You should definitely be an English major, he told me, leaning back into the booth, his arms stretched out on top of the bench, taking up so much space across from me. It was the pose that, if we were on a date, unseen in a dark theater, would be the transition movement before he put his arm around me. He wouldn't bother with a fake cough, he'd just go for it, I was sure. He would read me the greats at our table of beige formica and dull silver, Poe, Dickens, Hawthorne, Carroll. He'd get into it, doing voices when he read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, laughing at literary jokes that I was surely supposed to understand, so I laughed too. I laughed it up, knowing how lucky I was to have this kind of private instruction. That night, he was reading Lolita to me, in front of me, from the beginning of things. He spoke to me in Nabokov's opening lines languidly. Light of my life, fire of my loins. I thought it was the most romantic thing ever, but I was ruining it. I had a bug bite, and I kept pushing my ankles together, trying to quell the tinge of itch, a child who couldn't sit still. He began rubbing the edge of the pages with his thumb, harder and harder as his voice grew louder, creating tiny rips in the paper as he stroked them. Finally, he asked, "A mosquito bite?" "Yes," I said, an invisible ruler against my spine. "Don't you have any calamine lotion?" "Not on me," I said. "You know," he said, "saliva can stop the itch." He looked at me. He had green eyes. My flip-flopped feet were on the cracked red leather next to him on our booth, my legs under the table, bridging the gap between our benches, not touching, just beside him. I followed the rules. He leaned down to my foot next to him and put his lips on my pink, swollen ankle. I felt his breath on my skin. And it was like every locker in the halls of my high school swung open at once, metal kissing cinder block walls. It felt just like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you everybody for coming tonight. We're so happy to have you. Also, happy Hanukkah. I tried to put my menorah in my picture, but I didn't want to set my books on fire in the middle of our reading tonight. So that didn't happen, but happy holidays to everybody. So if you are still here, I would love to share with you the link to, we have an online auction that's starting actually right now. 2 minutes ago, it opened. So if you're part of this reading tonight, you can be the first person to, first people to join the online auction. I'm gonna put that in the chat right here, which is really exciting. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for celebrating the holidays with us at Epiphany. And thanks to all of our gorgeous readers. And thanks, Maris, for having us.
Thank you, everybody. The link to donate's in the chat.